You've probably heard a lot of people say that Minato's Sage Mode makes no sense, that it was forced, or worse, that Kishimoto just pulled it out of nowhere. But today, I'm going to show you why that's not true. Because Minato's Sage Mode was already being hinted at in the manga, way before the Ninja War ever happened. And more than that, he had already used it while he was alive. And I'm going to walk you through this step by step, showing exactly how Kishimoto planted the clues along the way. What's up, family? And let's be honest, it kind of became trendy to trash Naruto, right? Everything's a plot hole now. Everything's forced. Nothing makes sense. Kishimoto's suddenly a terrible writer. Or maybe people just don't pay attention. Naruto is a really complex story, packed with details. Yeah, it has retcons. Of course it does. But not everything is a retcon. A lot of things actually have explanations in the manga that people just overlooked. And then you know how it goes. Some so-called fans start saying everything in Naruto is forced. That came out of nowhere. Oh, Kishimoto just decided to give that character a power for no reason. Lately, I've seen a lot of the Naruto community saying that Minato's Sage Mode is pure fan service. No build-up, no narrative setup. That Minato just shows up in the war with Sage Mode out of nowhere. Especially because, not long before that, he asked Naruto to add Senjutsu to their Rasengan, instead of doing it himself. But here's the thing. That idea was already being worked into the story, long before the war. First point, Minato was listed as one of the ninja with a Toad summoning contract. All the way back in chapter 96, his name appears on the Toad Scroll, right alongside Naruto, Jiraiya, and Yahiko. And here's another detail people forget. Minato was actually the first character in the entire series to show a Toad summoning, before Jiraiya, all the way back in chapter 1. Now, Sage Mode itself is first properly explained in chapter 375. That's when we finally learn what Senjutsu really is. Then, in chapter 412, when Fukasaku takes Naruto to Mount Myoboku to train, he says something extremely important. This training isn't for just anyone. Only you and Jiraiya. I wouldn't bring anyone else here. A lot of fans take this as absolute exclusivity. Like only Naruto and Jiraiya ever had contact with Sage Mode. But if you slow down and actually think about it, that's not what he means. What Fukasaku is saying is that only people with massive shock reserves can adapt to this training. So why only mention Naruto and Jiraiya? Simple. Those were the only references Naruto knew at the time. Up until that moment, Naruto had no idea how skilled Minato really was. He didn't even know Minato was his father. That line does not mean no one else could ever master Senjutsu. In fact, it leaves the door wide open for other high chakra ninja to have gone through the same training, and guess who fits that profile perfectly? Yeah, Minato Namikaze. In chapter 418, Naruto finally activates Sage Mode without using Toad Oil. And more than that, he does it without developing any Toad features. Unlike Jiraiya, who always showed Toad traits. And the longer the fight dragged on, the more pronounced they became. At that moment, Fukasaku straight up admits that Naruto has surpassed Jiraiya in Senjutsu Mastery. And this is crucial, because Kishimoto is setting up a comparison system here, specifically about Senjutsu control. This doesn't mean Naruto could beat Jiraiya in a fight. Battles are way more than raw power. But the latter is clear. First, Naruto surpasses Jiraiya, who had an imperfect Sage Mode, something Fukasaku explicitly states. But as you'll see, that comparison ladder doesn't stop there. Naruto goes through the full training until he reaches the final stage, the fusion with the Sage Toads. This exists to cover one of the biggest weaknesses of Toad Sage Mode. Fukasaku explains that it's impossible to gather natural energy while moving, so the solution is to summon the Sage Toads to do that job for you. That way, in battle, the Sage Mode user isn't vulnerable while activating it, and also removes the time limit. Basically, every ninja who goes through this training is directly advised by Fukasaku to summon them during combat. That's why, during the fight against Pain, Fukasaku tells Jiraiya that he should learn to enter Sage Mode on his own, without always summoning them. And Jiraiya answers that he had no choice. His opponent was on another level. He had the Rinnegan, so this wasn't something exclusive to Jiraiya. Anyone who trained at Mount Myoboku could do this. Naruto only became the exception, because Kurama prevented the fusion. In chapter 430, Naruto arrives at the battlefield against Pain, already in Sage Mode. Right at the start, he obliterates the Asura path with a single Rasengan. Quick side note here, That was the first time Naruto created a Rasengan without using shadow clones. In the manga, you can clearly see the Rasengan in his hand. And then something really interesting happens. A conversation between Gamabunta and Fukasaku. Gamabunta looks at Naruto from behind and says he can see two people in him, Jiraiya and Minato. Fukasaku agrees, and then he says something huge. Naruto has already surpassed his predecessors. Plural. That line is easy to miss, but it's extremely revealing. Fukasaku is talking about Senjutsu mastery, which means Kishimoto is not only reinforcing that Jiraiya's Sage Mode was imperfect, he's also implying that Minato was another one of those predecessors Naruto had surpassed, and this happens just 55 chapters after Sage Mode is introduced in the story. Here's the key detail. Fukasaku only knows people who trained with him. Naruto had been summoning Gamabunta since he was a kid, but he only met Fukasaku when he went to Mount Myoboku. So if Fukasaku knows Minato's level in Senjutsu, that means Minato trained with him in the past. And that answers a question. People always ask, how could Fukasaku compare Naruto to Minato if Minato never trained Sage Mode? The answer is simple. He did. Fukasaku makes it very clear that he knew Minato well and knew his level of Senjutsu mastery. All of this is fully confirmed in chapters 665 and 667. That's when Minato finally activates Sage Mode during the Fourth Great Ninja War. And what do we see? A perfect Sage Mode, no Toad features, just like Naruto. That alone proves Minato's mastery was superior to Jiraiya's. But Minato himself explains his limitations. He took too long to gather natural energy, and he couldn't maintain Sage Mode for very long. In other words, Minato mastered Senjutsu on a technical level, but didn't have the same refined, long-term control as Naruto. And here's where translation context actually matters, but only from the original Japanese and the official English release. In the original Japanese, Minato explains that because of these limitations, even in real combat, he didn't use Sage Mode very often. The official English Viz translation follows this meaning exactly. So the correct interpretation is this. Minato had used Sage Mode in real battles. It just wasn't frequent. And that changes everything. It's not that he never used it. It's that it wasn't practical for his usual fighting style. Which also means he did use it when necessary. And since Fukasaku's final recommendation is fusion with the Sage Toads, there's nothing wrong with considering that possibility for Minato too. The narrative allows it. If someone argues, but Jiraiya only showed it once, then ask yourself, does that mean he only used it once in his entire life? No, the manga itself implies otherwise. Shima complains that Jiraiya always summons them into chaotic situations. Fukasaku says that Jiraiya must have his reasons, and Jiraiya apologizes for the circumstances, meaning it wasn't the first time. We just only saw it once. He didn't use it against Orochimaru. He didn't use it against Hanzo. So who did he use it against? We don't know. But narratively, he did use it. Same thing with Minato. We never saw him use it while alive, but he himself says he used it, just not often. Lack of on-screen use doesn't erase narrative use. And one more thing, Jiraiya took a bit to summon Shima and Fukasaku. Yeah, in the anime it looks like forever, but most of that fight is filler. In the manga, he summons them pretty quickly. Shima even shows it's possible to summon Fukasaku instantly, which highlights why mastering Senjutsu on your own matters, something Jiraiya couldn't fully do. Minato, on the other hand, could. So would Minato really take long to summon Fukasaku and Shima? I don't think so. If Shima can do it instantly, Minato with perfect Sage Mode could too. Now, let's answer some common fandom questions. If Minato had Sage Mode, why didn't he use it against Obito? Because in that situation, speed and precision mattered way more. Hiraishin was the perfect counter to Obito's intangibility. Entering Sage Mode would have taken longer than necessary. If he had it, why didn't he use it earlier in the story? He tells us why. He used it, just not often. Activation time was slow, duration was short, his fighting style was built around teleportation. And instant movement, not raw power. So Sage Mode was situational. When needed, he'd use it. But it was never his main tool. So if Minato wasn't that good at infusing Sage Chakra, why didn't he just summon Fukasaku and Shima during the war? The answer is actually pretty simple. By the time Minato figured out that Senjutsu worked on the Ten Tails Jinchuriki, he was already missing one of his arms. And that matters. A lot. Because without both arms, he physically couldn't perform the hand seal Jiraiya used. The exact one required to summon the Sage Toads. So it's not that Minato didn't know how, it's not that he lacked the skill. He literally couldn't do it. Jiraiya himself explains this to summon the Sage Toads. You have to maintain that specific hand seal. It's not optional. It's not flexible. It's very precise, and Minato, at that point in the war, just wasn't in the physical condition to pull it off. So yeah, was this just another nerf Minato took during the war? Was it fan service? Maybe, but it was fan service that actually fits the story. Kishimoto planted clues in chapters 412, 418, and 430, and only revealed it fully in 667. That's not a plot hole. That's narrative buildup. Look at the ladder Kishimoto builds. First, Naruto is compared to Jiraiya. In Perfect Sage Mode, Naruto surpasses him in chapter 418. Then, Naruto is compared to Minato. Perfect Sage Mode, but with time limits. Naruto surpasses him in chapter 430, when Fukasaku says he's surpassed his predecessors. Finally, Naruto becomes the true master of Senjutsu, with endurance and high-level control, surpassing both Jiraiya and Minato. That progression is way too clean to be accidental. Minato's Sage Mode isn't a last-minute invention. It's part of a deliberate narrative staircase. So, conclusion, Minato's Sage Mode makes sense. It was being implicitly set up just a few chapters after Sage Mode was introduced, long before the war. Chapter 412 opens the possibility. Chapter 418 establishes comparison. Chapter 430 confirms Minato's place in that comparison. Chapter 667 confirms everything. The clues were always there, and now you've got the evidence to shut down the forced argument. And as a bonus, you now know Minato used Sage Mode while he was alive. So what do you think? Should Kishimoto have explored Minato's Sage Mode more? Or was it better left as a hidden layer of the story? Let me know in the comments, and I'll see you in the next one.